Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Drummer. It's Sunday once again. We're a bit delayed, but not too late anyway. So it's now just 8 minutes past 2 o'clock in the UK, which means 9:08 in the evening in Manila and 5:08 in Dubai. So welcome everybody, and oh my God, this week um, I keep thinking, "Come up screaming!" You know that line, "Come up screaming." It's like, oh my God. When he said yes to Ask the Drummer, I just couldn't believe it. I feel so honored that I have him here, and I'm sure all my fellow new wavers in Manila, they're all sort of like wanting to hear his stories about big country and everything, and also his life and his drumming career. So yeah, I'm really excited about him. So we're gonna bring him on the show now. My dear friends, please welcome Mark, and I hope I pronounced this right, Mark Brzezicki.
Yes, that's it. Correct. Lord, much. Yes, I don't want to wear my glasses. I can see you better, but I'll go without for a minute. Yeah, I'm a little bit nasally getting over a cold, but I'm okay.
Yeah, how are you? Apart from being, sort of like getting a bit of having a bit of a cold, but how are you, generally speaking? So are you okay?
I'm always okay. Yeah, I consider myself to be pretty fit. Drumming's kept me that way, and I like walking and being with nature and doing things that keep me healthy, including my diet and things. It's important to maintain your health so you can play the drums, and that serves
Yeah,
you at the same time because I'm working with big other half of the show, and it's a good workout. Yeah, so yeah, I try and keep myself
yeah.
as I can. Absolutely, yes.
Oh, that's brilliant. So I got your name right
Yeah,
because it's always been so like ever since I saw like you said that you're gonna, you said yes to us, the drummer. I'm sort of like thinking, oh my God, how am I going to pronounce? How am I going to pronounce his name? But
yeah,
I think it's got something to do with like, do you remember Smash Hits, the
I do.
magazine? And they always have this thing that they call you as like Mark unpronounceable name of big country.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do have a long name, and with the letters in my name, being a Polish surname, it's very unusual to see two Z's coming in, and ICKI. It's a complicated name if you're English.
Yeah,
But having said that, what Smash Hits used to do was they used to say the unpronounceable name, Mark Brzezicki, the unpronounceable name of Big Country or from Big Country, but they had no space in the letters.
yeah,
So like my name was about 45, 50 letters long.
yeah, that's
But
true.
it's fine, I don't mind that because I've said this before. I have an unusual name. Now, some people would say, "Oh, I think I'll change my name. I'll call myself Mark Smith, or something that's far more British, or something that's easier to spell or to see." But to be honest with you, I quite like the fact that I'm proud of my heritage and the fact that you can see my name, and it's the name that you can't say. I
Yeah,
can look for my name in any review or anything. I can find it straight away because it looks different in print. So it's
yeah.
it's it's great for many reasons. Even if you say Mark, what's his name, the drummer, Mark, what's his name from Big Country, they still know it's me.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
my friend from Los Angeles, I hope he's watching. Hello, Jess Manuel. He said that at least you're not talking to Bazia of Matt Bianco, because I think Bazia's got an even harder so like name to pronounce. I mean, I don't even know how to spell it, but I know it starts with a T. So
yeah.
it's like, yeah.
Well, but
So
with Brzezicki, if you say it correctly, it's Brzezicki. It's Brzez. B-R-Z is Brzez. So most people can't think about saying it that way. They kind of make it sound English. They kind of say, he's a southerner from London, so it's Brzezicki. Like I'm kind of Cockney. Cockney.
Well, last time I saw you was in Nantwich. That
Yeah.
was such an amazing gig, and I just wanted to say that thank you so much for coming out to say hello to the fans, and like myself. So I'm really grateful because I know it's still, the virus is still around, and I know that the musicians, and they're also like worried that they might catch it, especially if you're on tour. You just want to make sure that you're safe.
I, I became a little bit unsociable. I mean, I was doing this before the lockdown, before COVID even happened. I used to get colds quite regularly. I tend to be vulnerable to colds. I don't know why that is, but I found that when I was shaking people's hands, which is a good thing to do after a show, um, you've only got to rub your eyes after that, and you can catch a cold very easily. So, a good year before COVID, I was doing the old punch thing,
Yeah.
it's possible to actually shake somebody's hand. And I hope I never came across as unsociable, but I was always trying to avoid catching a cold, let alone.
Yeah.
But I know I'm pretty good. I always try and interact with the fans, particularly if they want to speak to me about whatever. Drumming is always interesting, and I try and give them time because I'm always mindful that we wouldn't be there without them. The fans are very, I wouldn't be doing the show with nobody there, and it's good to always remember that. Keep yourself grounded. That it's the fans and the people that follow you that keep your life together and keep my drumming together.
Wow.
It's very important.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Because I always say that. I mean, I like waiting for the bands to come out and so like meet them and stuff. But it's always like I don't get upset when they don't, because you've seen them perform and they already gave you an amazing show. And sometimes you don't understand that they're really tired, because especially with drummers, it's a very tiring job. So, but
I don't think if you play correctly, you shouldn't really be getting tired because you should be in condition, first of all, if you're playing regularly. I think if you haven't played for a long time and you suddenly do a gig that's an hour and a half long, you're going to be pretty exhausted. But if you're playing regularly, like somebody, I mean, I treat myself no different to somebody who may go for a jog. You wouldn't go for a 3-mile jog if you haven't done it for a while. You'll be out of breath in the first minute. So it's the same discipline you use when you're drumming. If you're playing regularly and you're hitting correctly, you can be, even if the way you hit the drums is very important. There's a lot of
oh, that's cute.
That's fine. Yes, with drums, if we're talking drums, which we are, to drummers and to those to our drummers, it's interesting to know that it's great when you see drummers moving their arms a lot, and it's very visual, and that's the value, with certain kind of music. It looks great. Good in good in videos and things, and I've never been from that school. I've tried to flower my, I'm a tall guy with long arms, and I've tried to flower my arms around a bit more. When we were doing early videos at Big Country, I think the producer said, can you move your arms a bit more? I thought, I don't know how to, because I play drums. I try and play the drums where you're hitting them correctly, and to hit the drums correctly, you don't need to use a lot of arm power or much muscle. You're trying to be accurate to where you're hitting, because I have a lot of drums, and the truth is, if you hit too hard, the drums choke and they don't actually produce the right sound. You're over hitting. So when you hit the drums too hard, like people think you should sometimes, they don't get any louder. In fact, they get quieter, and the sound doesn't get very good. It deteriorates. Yeah. So there's there's a sweet optimum hit with the size of the drum and the tuning that you can do, and you get to know that when you played your instrument a while. You know how it will sing. You know that when you play and you hit it in a certain way, how it will respond. And hitting it any harder doesn't get you any further. It can make it counterproductive. So, and also the fact that you're using less energy. I try and set my drums up so they're ergonomic, and by that I mean I don't have the drums with. I have a lot of drums. It depends who I work with and what fits in the band. But I have a lot of drums where they start small and get bigger and bigger as drums do, but I have them very close together so that I'm trying to minimize the amount of from A to B to C to D, however many drums I have. And it makes it easier to play, and they're more accessible instantly. So, and you know, you can kind of cruise playing them. You're not actually working hard to try and reach the drums and
yeah.
do hard, and you're hitting correctly. I mean, a lot of how I play is you know, you're using your wrists. I know it's a thing to say, and your fingers as well. It's all in the fingers with drums the way you play. Not really a lot about big arm movement. So I don't really exhausted. If anything, it's the footwork can be exhausting more so than anything else, because if you're playing double pedals or double bass drum, you know, if you're playing, depends on your technique, you know, you can get tired legs if you've been playing for a long show.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Oh wow! But well, we haven't actually gone to sort like the interview proper. But before we carry on, I just want to say hello to Monty Mendigoria. Monty is in Manila. Hello, Monty. Trevor Palmer, who's in Skipton, he said hello, Anne and Mark, and Ruel Marazigan, who's he said greetings from Detroit. So yeah, it's hello to everyone, and thank you for joining us live. So welcome to Ask the Drummer. Episode 39 is all about you, Mark Brzezicki. Now, you've already explained to us that Brzezicki is like a Polish name, and but I was googling you, and you were actually born in Slough. Is that correct? Hello? Right. So we were talking about your name, your last name. So it's a Polish name.
Yeah.
So your dad's Polish and your mom's English.
Yes.
But you were actually born in Slough?
Yes, in Langley, which is between Slough and Windsor. It's a suburb of Slough. It's very near Heathrow Airport. In fact, the reason the house is there is I was born in this house. I did move out and I have another property, but I was able to buy my mother's house before she passed, and it's still my family home, so I wanted to buy it. And the location is fantastic because it's very near Heathrow Airport for my travelling, and it's near the major motorways for the M4, the M25, and have good access in the southeast to get anywhere in the country with trains and planes, and you know, even the coast isn't far away. Brighton's only 50 miles away, so it's a good location, and it's good for me at the moment to be, you know, being able to come from. My dad bought the house because he was in the Polish Air Force, and when when the war finished, he was stationed at Northolt Aerodrome, which is not far from where they were building a new airport called London Airport in 1954. And my dad got a job at the airport, so he bought a house nearby, which is why this house is near the airport. So that's the reason, the location. My family home, yeah.
Well, later on, I'm going to ask you because Big Country is like one of those most famous Scottish bands. And I've always thought that you were Scottish yourself, but when I found out you're actually not Scottish, but I'm going to ask.
Very English.
Yeah, but I'm going to ask you about Big Country later on. Yeah. So, what was Slough like when you were growing up? Like, especially the music scene in Slough. What was it like?
Well, there wasn't really a scene, is the truth. I mean, there wasn't many musicians anywhere, not like there is today. You know, people get taught music at school now. Most people have access to the internet and to YouTube and all kinds of teaching outlets where you can learn an instrument, and it's become very, very, very popular to play an instrument. But when I was growing up, I was probably the only drummer in a 5-mile radius, you know. So there wasn't really a music scene here at all. The only we had a local music shop in Langley, which is where I'm from, called the Guitar Centre in Langley, which were fantastic. We used to go down there and look at the instruments, and I used to buy my drums when I was a paper boy delivering newspapers. I used to buy my drums, and he used to give me credit of 50p a month or something, or £1 a month to buy my early drums. And there was a guy I used to know that lived in Langley. He's a great guitarist. A guy called John Clark from Slough. He's known as the unknown John Clark from Slough, and he went on to play with Alan Holdsworth. I mean, he's a fabulous guitarist, and also he toured for many years with Cliff Richard. So he was a friend, and he was a local guy. The only guy I know that was of any notoriety from where I'm from. All my heroes came from either London or America, or they were records that we all heard. We all heard records. There was no real scene here at all. I cut my teeth playing my drums, doing session work in London as a session drummer, doing TV ads and commercials. And for different songwriters, I used to go to a studio in Albert Street in West One, I think it was. Well, it was in the middle of London anyway. And it was a studio called Hallmark Studios with a lovely producer called Steve Hall, who I've kind of lost contact with. But from the early age of when I was 16, 17, 18 onwards, I was always doing studio work down in that studio. It was under the pavement where the drum booth was. You could see people walking above. I remember you had that thick glass, that square glass tiles that you often have in the pavements to let light in basements. But the drum room was there. It was very small, but I learned a lot of my studio technique and recording drums and how they could stand record, doing all those sessions, which I still do today, session work. So I always my drum was
what got you into drumming? Is there sort of like a particular moment in time where you said, well, I really want to do this?
Well, I had no desire to play the drums at all. I wasn't on the radar. It was only because my brother bought a bass guitar. I come from a family of 5. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. I'm the middle one. And my younger brother, Steve, bought himself, he's 2 years younger than me, Steve. And my older brother is 2 years older than me. So my older brother bought a guitar and my younger brother bought a bass. And they went across the road from this house here, actually, into a friend called Pete Townshend who had a little drum kit in his garage, and they were jamming. I don't know what they were jamming because they couldn't really play. I was curious. I kind of went over there just to be not left out, I guess, and just to be around with my brothers, and he was a good family friend. And what it was, I think, is drums. I'd always noticed the drums on records more so than the vocals and the guitars. They're the ones I always noticed, I must admit. And when I saw the drum kit, it really excited me because you never really saw when I was growing up. I never went to any gigs. I was 16. I never saw a drum kit close up. I only ever saw them on television. I only ever saw them on record.
Yeah.
So, this is going to be a very, very, very strange comparison, but I'm going to give you it anyway. Most people, when they see an aeroplane, most people see them in the air and they're small. But when you go to the airport as a child, which I did because my father worked for BOAC after being in the Polish Air Force, when I saw an aeroplane close up and I realised how big they were, it really excited me. And I've had a love affair with aeroplanes for that reason, the fact that you only ever see them in the sky, but when you see them close up, it's a very exciting thing. And I had the same thing for the drums. I saw the drum kit, across the road, and I thought, wow, it was a Sparkle, Aquamarine Sparkle Gigster kit, with only one rack top. But it looked really exciting. It looked like it was ready to make a noise, and I mean, if it fell over, it would make a nice noise. And so I ended up tapping around on the drums, and I really liked it. I loved the resonance it gave me back. And in the end, Peter said to me, who owned the drums, who was rehearsing with my brothers, said, "Why don't you have it? I've kind of lost interest in it. So why don't you buy it off me?" So that's what I did. I took it from across the road into the bedroom next door here, because I'm at my parents' house here.
Well, did you have any drumming lessons, or did you just sort of like teach yourself how to play it?
I was listening to records. I haven't had a lesson in my life. My father being Polish, he was also an opera singer. So he was a trained opera singer. He would do his scales every day at 1 in the afternoon for an hour. and he would play some beautiful Italian operas and all those greats he would play and sing along to at home. We had piano as well, so we're kind of a musical family with the piano.
Yeah.
My mum, she was very, very different. Being, my dad would play Hungarian gypsy music and all kinds of East Bloc music, and which I love. And my mum would play very different music. She would play things from Adam Faith. Most people probably wouldn't know who he was, but interesting things she would play from the classics at that time, Motown records and things. And I always loved the drumming in that. They kind of stuck out to me. And I did an interview recently when they asked me what was an early influence. And it's a crazy thing to say, but one of my early influences, because I was self-taught, the first thing I really heard on drums was the Monster Mash, which is a record. But when you play that, in hindsight, the drums are very, very, very prominent. And they're very easy to emulate. So I was putting that record on and running up into my bedroom and then playing what I heard that record, because I didn't own any records, and I think there was another song that came out called Dizzy. I can't remember who it was, but it had a drum intro, kind of and that was the drums were playing on their own with no music, and then the music would come in. So that was like, I can play that, and I found those things really easy to play for some reason. And then I got into wanting to learn proper drums, and my brother particularly, my brother was listening to things like Led Zeppelin, my older brother, and David Bowie, and my younger brother was listening to anything that had no vocals on, because when there was no vocals, because he was a bass player and I was a drummer, you can hear the drums a lot clearer when there's no vocals. I mean, I love songs with vocals because I'm a song drummer, and they have a big value to the music. That's what songwriters are. But from a selfish point of view, to learn the drums, I listened to as many records that had brilliant drummers on it as I was learning, finding my way. And I found I was listening to all American drummers, really, from Steve Gadd to Harvey Mason to Billy Cobham. These were great 70s drummers, because I came through that era of learning to drum.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've been bettered. I think it was a great, fantastic era for drumming, the 70s, and for music. I even like the disco era, and the ABBA era. Some of the drumming on the ABBA records, fantastic. Great studio work on there. So I listened to all kinds of jazz fusion records, from Dixie Drex with Rod Morgenstein playing drums, which probably nobody's heard, but he's a wicked drummer, to Herbie Hancock with Mike Clark playing. I love Simon Phillips. He was on my radar early on, and I got into kind of prog rock because it was interesting. Drumming, I think, was the 4/4, so I liked the early Genesis stuff. And that led me to being able to go to a gig. I have to say this because it was a huge part of what changed my life was I got asked to go to would I like to go to my first concert, because I've missed a lot of story out here. I'll tell you very, very quickly. I ended up doing the working men's clubs, playing covers that was in the top 10 around in the 1970s. So I had to learn anything from a waltz to a foxtrot, if people know what they are, to playing a bossa nova, to playing the top 10, to playing a Michael Jackson song, to playing the Commodores, all those things that were around in the 1970s. I had to play because I was in a covers band called Silver Street. We had a blind singer. We had a blind singer who was he used to go to music college, and he was incredible. So he gave me a lot of discipline in playing quiet in the dinner dance. And when there's nobody eating their dinner, we have to play the same song louder without speeding up. So I played covers, really, but I wanted to be in an original band because I was listening to all these great drummers. And I was invited to go to my first ever concert I'd ever been to, like a proper concert. And it was at the Roundhouse in Chalk Farm in London.
In London, yeah.
I was going to see a band called Boxer, who I'd never heard of, and I had no real interest in going other than I was curious to see what the drummer would be like. Because I learned to play the drums watching other drummers in these pubs and bars. I just watched the drummer. And to my surprise, the support band was a band called Brand X. And the drummer came out I didn't even know who he was, and everyone was saying, "Hey, look, it's Phil Collins. It's Phil Collins. It's his side project from Genesis." And he had an amazing drum kit. It was an incredible drum kit. It looked like he had all timbales as tom-toms. Like they were all timbales, all single-headed drums. They looked like they were timbales, but I think they may have been a mixture of rototoms and his single-headed concert toms that he used. But when he played, it was a life-changing moment for me as a drummer. That was it. That was the best music I'd ever heard on the drums. It was the best drumming I'd ever heard ever. It was
Phil Collins.
His drumming in Next is off the charts good. His drumming in everything he does is off the charts good, but particularly in Brand into a more jazz fusion area. He was less prog rock, although that served him well for the jazz fusion because the odd time signatures and things. But his drum sound, even today, is an album called Unorthodox Behavior, and it's very personal to me because his drum sound is the ultimate drum sound. I mean, I would love to aspire to get a drum sound as good as that. I'm very humble about that. I have my own sound, but the drum sound that I love on record, and I don't think it's ever been beaten, is Phil Collins with Unorthodox Behavior. Any track on that drum sound, incredible. And even the drumming is incredible. It's still really difficult to play with the feel that he does. And he's a hero and idol for most of my life. I love other drummers as well, obviously, but he's still the main man for me.
Oh, wow.
Rated. I know he's a very famous drummer, but those who play drums and haven't tapped into Phil Collins because they may see him as the singer-songwriter, which he's also great at. They're missing something because I learned to play the drums on that one record. I put that record on and I still put it on to refresh myself how to play. Along with the Billy Cobham Spectrum album and Return to Forever with who was it? Who was the guy playing drums on it? It come to me. Terry Brown was a drummer. Forever. He left-handed player. Similar drum sound. They had that kind of 70s fabulous, recorded drums. They had proper studios they were in. They weren't recorded at home. They recorded in these amazing studios with these fabulous microphones. When they were groundbreaking drummers to me, and I love those drummers. So, but it was Phil Collins that really, really did it for me, and I saw him live, and I was very honoured. Many, many years later, I was able to play next to him in the with the Princess Trust when I was the house drummer alongside Phil Collins with all these wonderful artists. So,
Oh my God. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, my tech support, which is my husband, he said that he loved Brand X. So it's like, I've not heard of it, but now I'm going to search for it, and then But anyways,
any drummer would love it if you're a certain style of drummer, I guess if you like that kind of exciting drum fills and really crazy rhythms and incredibly well recorded drums and very, very clever drum parts. But Phil's also got a beautiful delicacy in his playing, which he has a very feathery touch with the grace notes, as we call it. There's a lot of grace notes, which a lot of people don't use these days. They kind of gate them out. I'm a big anti-gate person. I don't mind gates for big drum sounds for production, but I don't like gated sounds when you're trying to put detail in because it kind of chokes your playing. I call them the vibe sponge, the gates, but that's personal.
Well, Trevor Palmer said it's Tommy Rowe did Dizzy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And he also said that he worked on the construction of Langley Academy.
Oh, okay.
That's Trevor Palmer. So, and I also want to say hello to Alan Braun Ramirez. He's come back for part 2, and also Spence Roberts. He said Mark's a fabulous, unique drummer. Remember seeing Big Country for the first time on the Tube playing Fields on Fire, and he said that he loved The Crossing. So yeah, I love that album too. Which I've got in red, green, and blue that you signed for me when I saw you in Nantwich. So oh my God, Phil Collins, because sometimes it's funny because some people actually make, well, not really make fun, but it's almost like it's not cool to like Phil
Well,
Collins.
I don't get into what's cool. I just use my ears, and you know, today's fashion is tomorrow's fancy dress is tomorrow's fashion. You know, it goes round in circles, um, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't help. You know, when you have different. Every era has a different sound, doesn't it? You know, the sound of the '60s, the sound of the '70s was a lot. It was a much more controlled, dead drum sound. You know, the bass drum sounded a lot like the snare. It kind of was like a doo, 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 doo. You couldn't. It was, and with the disco hi hat and things, which I love. And when he got into the '80s, you had that huge big drum sound that Phil Collins was a big part of. Big Country used that as well, because Steve
yeah,
Lillywhite with both people, and so Steve was also using those big sounds for me. But I didn't particularly use gates on my drums. I used what was called compression, and there's a difference by the fact that it's not just gated out where you lose your nuances. What Steve Lillywhite was doing and what Phil Collins was doing with his producer was um, he was using room microphones away from the drums. So you were close mic in the drums to get the delicate sound close up so you hear every detail. But he was also putting microphones in the corner of the room, 20 feet away, up in the ceiling, you know, and that when you mix that in with the drums, you get this beautiful, huge, big drum sound without losing the detail. And then you can add some compression on it to keep the lows as good as the highs. So it's
yeah,
not completely gated as people jump to conclusion with drum sounds in the '80s. And Phil Collins was groundbreaking with his drum sounds. But you know, it becomes very stylized. And you know, when one decade moves into the next, as like fashion, people suddenly want something different. You know, but it doesn't take away from me
yeah,
how good when it was there, and it still has a huge value. And
yeah,
you listen to Brand X, it's a very very clean, honest drum sound. It's not an ambient drum sound at all. And most people, when I've played it, I say, "Who do you think's drumming on this?" And I put Brand X on. They go, "I haven't a clue. Is it Billy Cobham? Is it Jerry Brown? Is it da da? Is it da da da?" No, it's Phil Collins. They go, "Oh my God, I didn't know he could play like this." Well, he's always played. If you listen to Genesis and his beautiful time signatures he plays in that, it's no different to Brand X really, except the music is different. And when it came to the 1980s, where he was playing piano and songwriting, he was going for a completely different production. So the drums got to that 80s sound that he was a pioneer
yeah, yeah. Well, the most famous one is the In the Air Tonight. And I really, really love that drum bit. I mean, they've used it in adverts and stuff, but that's actually for me. It's
of. You know, very. I think he's been on record by saying he didn't really intend to use that particular fill. There was a few fills he was going to use at that point, but that one was one that I think the producer said we'll go with that one. And it's been like I don't know whether it's been a noose around his neck or a calling card. I'm not sure. Either way, it's a fantastic fill. Um, many times, in fact, I did an album with Frida from ABBA, a solo album, because Phil Collins had played on the one before me, and I got asked to do the one after that. And I doffed my cap to Phil. We got a really big. There's a track called "Twist in the Dark." And we went for that kind of big ambient drum sound again, not unlike Phil Collins had. And it suited Frida's new direction, breaking away from ABBA. And when it came to the middle eight, I thought, I'm going to do a drum fill like Phil Collins, but I did it back to front. Instead of going ba 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 ba
yeah.
ba, I put the downbeat on the bass drum and the toms on the end. So instead of when Phil starts on the one, ba 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 ba, I went ba 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 ba. I swapped it. Actually, it sounds pretty simple, and it sounds like I'm just nitpicking, but it's back to front version of that Phil, and I wanted to do that for many reasons, and they all liked it. So yeah,
Oh
it's a
wow. And yeah. So what's this? What's it called? Is it Annie Fried? What did you say? Annie Fried from ABBA?
the
Is it?
album is called Frida Shine, Shine, and that particular track is called Twist in the Dark. It's a very good drum track. Actually.
Yeah.
You'll
I'm
hear
gonna
that
write
drum.
it down so I can. I'm gonna sort of like
I
search for
trip.
it on YouTube. Pardon. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was again, it was my recognition to the great Phil Collins because yeah,
Yeah.
just
Um,
played on.
I,
I was very privileged to play the next record, and I wanted to keep a similar kind of feel on the drums and a similar sound. So
Yeah, that's amazing. But now we're gonna talk about Big Country because
yeah,
I've
sure.
only realized this. It's got Big Country 17 top 30 UK singles and achieving 5 gold and platinum status albums. And I mean, Big Country is like famous worldwide. I mean, you're massive in the Philippines as well. So it's like for me, this is this is really really big, as we say.
Yeah.
So, a Big Country being a band from Dunfermline in Scotland, and you're from Slough. So, how did you get into sort of like Big Country? How did you become the drummer of Big Country?
I'm going to have to give you because I can waffle too much, and there's also so many things sub stories to my story. So I try and be very quick. Yeah, I was with I was with a prop rock band with Simon Townsend, and we went from being a 5-piece prog rock band, Pete Townshend's brother Simon Townsend, and that was with Tony Butler, the bass player, who became Big
Oh,
Country's
yeah.
bass player. And we working with Simon, we ended up working with Pete Townsend, the older brother, um, on his solo projects, which is he's a great, obviously he's a great songwriter and guitarist. And we got asked to play on his record Empty Glass and many of the other solo albums that Pete's done, including a recent one that I'm working on. So he asked if we would want to do a show with him, a charity show in 1981 at Brockwell Park in London, where there was a march from Newcastle to end up in. It was a big right to work march, people on strike and they were protesting, and it would end up in this park. And Pete Townsend, I've frozen. Can you hear
No,
me?
you're
Okay.
okay. Yeah, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Townsend was the headlining act, and me and Tony, who became Big Country's rhythm section, were his rhythm section because we were already playing with him on his records. And there was a support band called the Members, who were a punk rock band, and they were managed by the guy who was managing the Skids, where Stuart Adamson was from. And he approached us and said that Big Country tried to make a start in Dunfermline using an all-Scottish lineup, and it wasn't working out. The record company said, if you want to get a record deal, you're going to have to get a decent rhythm section. Come back to us with a decent rhythm section, and we will look at signing you up for a record deal. So he approached us and said, look, you two guys are from London. These two guys are from Scotland. Would you mind meeting up with Stuart and Bruce Watson at Phonogram Records? Which is what we did, and the record company already knew of us because we had a bit of a reputation, which is great. We were going around London doing all kinds of sessions with Pete Townsend and the Pretenders, or with Tony with that. So we already had a good reputation, which was great. And the record company said instantly, this is the lineup. We recorded some of the songs at their studio, and they said, this is it. We got the band we want. So we joined Big Country. That was it.
Wow.
Two people from London and 2 people from Dunfermline. So it's not entirely a Scottish band. In fact, if you actually look very deep into this, nobody was born in Scotland in the country. Nobody.
Oh, yeah. I believe Stuart Adamson was born in Manchester. Somebody told me that. So
he had Scottish parents, but for some reason they were in Manchester. So he was born in Manchester, and 2 years later he moved to Scotland. So, he's Scottish through and through, but technically he was born in Manchester.
Yeah,
and Bruce was
yeah.
born in Ontario, I'm thinking Canada. I was born in Lang, and Tony was born in Shepherd's Bush in London.
Oh.
So,
last Friday,
really Scottish in Big Country.
Yeah, well, last Friday you played in Dunfermline, is that right?
Yeah, we did. We did. There was a multi-show with the Armory Show, which is Richard Jobson's band when Big Country broke up. Not broke up,
Yeah,
when the Skids broke up. He
the
formed the
Skids.
Armory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So we had the Armory Show, then we had the Skids. No, we had the Armory Show, then we had Big Country and the Skids. So it was a triple whammy for fans that follow the World Cup.
yeah.
And
So
the common thread is, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's almost like a hometown gig now because it was in Dunfermline, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Did it feel like a hometown gig?
my second hometown, because my hometown's not there. It's going up to Dunfermline from 1981 onwards, very, very regularly. It kind of became my second home. Except for the fact I spent more time in Scotland during my growing up, I guess, than I did around here at some point. So it's a beautiful country and great people.
Yeah. Well, like I've said, Big Country are actually really famous in the Philippines. I mean, songs like "In a Big Country," of course, "Chance" and "Look Away." But the one thing that I really remembered the most, and I'm sure many Filipinos also remember, is the Band Aid recording, because there was that sort of like line there was. We all thought it was Stuart Adamson who said it when he said like "feed the people, stay alive," and it sounded really Scottish. But before, because we didn't have any internet there, we all thought it was Stuart Adamson who said those lines. But it turned out it was actually Bruce Watson who said it. And I mean, for us, when we were teenagers, the Scottish accent, that's just absolutely amazing. And I think people, we really wanted to copy it. And also quite a lot of British accents as well. But it was actually Bruce Watson who said those lines, wasn't it?
I mean, if it was, I've learned something today. I thought it was Stuart, but I've got a copy of it somewhere on vinyl because we didn't play on the single. We played on the B. We spoke on the B side, giving our giving the message, because we all say hi. It's Mark Brzezicki from Big Country. Stay alive. Da-di-da-di-da-da. And then I thought it was Stuart who said it at the end, but I don't have a great memory and I haven't played it for many years. So maybe you're right.
Yeah.
But maybe we should leave a question mark on that. I don't know. When we ever did anything like that, Stuart would normally end up being the lead singer. He would normally say the last thing. If we did any promos for any radio stations, it would normally be that he would say it last. So I would have expected it to be Stuart. If it wasn't, then it was Bruce. But it's news to me.
Yeah, it was so like now that we've got the internet. I mean, it was like for us as well that it was really surprising that it wasn't Stuart Adamson who said it. It was Bruce Watson. So really, yeah.
Did Bruce say it was him?
It was on the internet. It was all like when we were I think there was a documentary as well about the Band Aid doing the record and stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, but, I also want to say hello again from Detroit, from Roel Mercigan. He said that sadly, Phil Collins is such an underrated drummer in America.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Collins is a very famous drummer, also a famous singer because he stepped into the shoes when Peter Gabriel left. They were auditioning for. Phil Collins was always doing the backing vocals with Peter Gabriel, and Phil actually said, hang on a minute, the guys were auditioning, I can do it better, let me have a go. And he was a better vocalist, and he's proven to be. He was the great choice for Genesis after Peter Gabriel left. But his drumming has always been, to drummers, those who play in a certain style, he's an incredible drummer, and I say underrated. It's a funny word, underrated, because it depends if you're talking about now. Now some new generations may not know who he is, or they may think he's a guy that sings and that plays piano. It's just those who don't know, then he's underrated. But those who know, growing up in the 70s and through the 80s, he's an incredible drummer.
Yeah. He is. You played drums, so many different bands and artists, and the next one I'm going to ask you is being a member of the Cult. Now, I've asked you this before, but I've got a message from a drummer, Mike Simpkins. He's actually Captain Mike Simpkins because he's a professional pilot, and he wanted me to say, "Hello, Mark," and he also said that you nicked my job for drumming for the Cult, and he was talking about the Love album because you played on the Love album as well. So, have you got anything to say to Mike Simpkins about it?
But he's a pilot, so he's nicked my job because I was aircraft mad pilot. He's another Bruce Dickinson, I guess. He's a musician that's now a pilot. But no, I don't take anyone's work. The way that came about was really, really quite quickly. We had the same. We had the management company was called Grant Edwards Management, and Ian Grant looked after Big Country, and Alan Edwards looked after the Cult. He's now a really famous publicist, Alan Edwards. And they with anything, you have a schedule and you have a timeline that you've got to meet because the record company are investing in the band. And I know they were having constant problems with Nigel Preston, who sadly passed away with drug issues, which is very sad. So they were due to go in and record this record after having a hit with She Self Sanctuary. So they asked me to go along down to Wimbledon Theatre, because they couldn't get hold of Nigel at all, to play the She Self Sanctuary video. And after being in the video, they said, well, a week later, they said, we still cannot get in contact with, we can't find him, he's gone missing. But we're due to go to Jacobs Studios in Surrey to record a new record. We don't know what it's going to be called. It was the Love album, but that always comes later.
Yeah.
And are you available? So my management, as it's the same, comes under the same umbrella. And we knew them anyway because we would meet up at the offices and they would often be there. They're good friends of ours, Edie and Ian. And so I'd be delighted to, I knew a little bit about the band, and Nigel played great drums actually. So yeah, I just said, yeah, I'll do it. When do you want me to go? And it was like, well, in 2 days' time, could we go down to the studio and meet the guys? And this is what I did. We had a guy called Steve Brown produced, and sadly, he's no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago. And the story goes that they thought he was going to. They thought they were booking Steve Lillywhite, and for some reason, the record company thought they were booking Steve Brown, which was a great thing. The way fate plays its hand, either producer would have made a great record because Steve's fantastic, and Steve Brown and Steve Lillywhite were schoolboy friends. They grew up together, and they were great friends. And they had a similar way of working because Steve Lillywhite was a joy to work with, as was Steve Brown. And it was a very easy record to make. Steve Brown was incredible with the sounds, as he would be, being coming from the same school as Steve Lillywhite. And a very easy guy to work with. He was very affable, and he was very enthusiastic about bringing new ideas. I did that thing as a session when I record with other people. I'm actually a session drummer because it's not my band. But I don't want to feel like I'm a session drummer. Because they're friends of mine, I want to feel like I'm part of the band. And to give your soul when you play is what you do when you play music. You've got to respect lots of things. And I'm honoured to be playing on somebody else's record, to be asked. And they wanted me particularly to do it. They chose me to do it. It wasn't just because I was a comedian. They knew my background and my history, and they liked the way I played. So that was a big part of why I got asked, and it was easy to ask because we were under the same management. But I found it very easy to do because the ideas were so good, and in a way, the music was so good. They were coming out like the Southern Death Cult into the Death Cult, then became the Cult. Musically, they were slow. They got slight gothic overtones with them, and musically it was fantastic. Billy's guitar playing was incredible, and Ian's voice was inspirational, and so was the bass as well. So I fitted in straight away. It was a 4-piece rock band. It was the same lineup as Big Country. It was bass, drums, guitar, and a vocalist, and it worked really. It kind of it played out on itself. they allowed me to be very free, particularly the producer. So I would come up with these interesting drum ideas. I didn't want it to be like a normal rock record. I was just playing duff bang, every song is duff bang, because I can play like that till the cows come home, and I kind of like playing that. If the energy is required, I like that backbeat thing. But I wanted to make it interesting, so I swapped things around. I put the bass drum where the snare was, because that was the thing in the 70s. I said to you earlier that often I couldn't tell which way round the drum beat went in the 70s, because it was like, so you could play it backwards. It still expressed itself similar. So with the Phoenix on that, I thought, well, wouldn't it be a great idea to try and give it some flavour, try and bring something else to the table, because they're allowing me to do that. They weren't telling me play like John Bonham, play like this guy. They were saying play like Mark Brzezicki.
Like, so, yeah.
I not do what I want, but I had the license to make it interesting and bring my thing as if I was a band member. If I joined the cult, I would have played no different. And I try and do that with my session work. I try and feel like that I'm a band member and that I'm contributing something to the music rather than just keeping time. So I swapped the rhythm around on the Phoenix. If you listen to the opening track of the Phoenix, the bass drum is where the snare is, because the rhythm is actually 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, dat, go, do dat, go, dat, go, do dat. But instead of putting the downbeat on the bass drum, I hit it on the snare. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Stat, boom, sat, go, boom, bat, boom, stat, go, boom. I'd swap it around, but it's the same expression. And I kind of stole that from thinking, well, a lot of the disco rhythms had a similar groove. You could play them backwards. It's so much so that, because I do like disco music as well, I did some disco high. If you listen to what was their other single, Rain. If you listen to Rain, I do a which is basically disco.
Yeah.
Billy Duffy said to me in his lovely Mancunian accent, Mark, he said, I like what you're doing there. He said, what rhythm is that? I said it's called pea soup. Is it called pea soup? I didn't want to say it's disco, because it's like, well, I don't want disco on my rock music. It doesn't know it's on rock. It's a rhythm, something to dance to. So it made it more dancey. So I said it was called pea soup because it goes pea soup, 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 pea soup, soup. That's so. I think the album that got released, the Love album, got released a few years ago on their 35th anniversary. They actually say, Mark, that drum track, Mark, the rhythms that Mark made is called Pea Soup. They've actually written that down in the notes on the record, which is very nice.
Well, it's funny because
on that record, not to play straight ahead. If you don't mind giving, instead of playing, that, I would go bang. I would do what was called 2-bar sequences, which nobody was really doing then, where you play a rhythm over 2 bars and repeat it. Because drumming is always 4/4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3. But I was going, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, repeat it. So I would play a sequence that was 2 bars long. That's the part. There it is, repeated again. It's over 2 bars, and it gave it a different feel, and they allowed me to do that, which was wonderful. Now the thing is, I want to say something here, that when you're creating new music, which I've had the privilege to do, it doesn't matter what you do as long as it gets accepted by the producer of the band. That is now the blueprint that whoever plays it further on down the line will have to copy. I made that. Now they've got to copy it. When they do it live, the drummer's got to go, oh, how does it go? Why did he play that bit like that? I always like to see how they play those things that I try and invent, so it's always interesting.
Oh, well, it's funny that you say that you love disco, because I love disco, and we were recently, me and my husband were talking about it, and there's always been so like there was a disco backlash, I think, at the time, and people just doesn't want to say disco because
Yeah, but
it's almost like a bad word to say. It's like,
it's like one day today's clothes are tomorrow's fancy dress, which comes
yeah,
to
yeah,
in the 1970s. I was listening to this incredible jazz fusion prog rock, and then disco came as well, and that kind of competed with prog rock and all that stuff because it was very, very easy, accessible music and very commercial songs. But then what killed all that, what killed disco and prog rock was punk rock, 1976, 77 onwards. So punk rock kind of put the nails in the coffin for prog rock and disco, basically.
this,
It was a flash for, that kind of glitzy, glamoury, middle of the road stuff of disco, which it's got some great songs on there, some great songwriting, very, very
yeah,
danceable. But also prog rock was drummers wouldn't play the way they play today if prog rock never happened, or if jazz fusion never happened. We wouldn't be playing the way we play. I certainly wouldn't be. And most drummers, when you see when they get taught and they go to school and they learn drums, it's because of what happened before is why they're able to play the rhythms they play now. Even to think about the way they program rhythms, a lot of those rhythms were already played in the prog rock era back in the 70s. Most of those great rhythms have already been done. They're only
yeah,
rediscovering what's already there. So it had a huge value that the music that kind of got when punk rock broke, and killed it all off. It still surfaced in many things now because even punk rock
yeah,
started. I wasn't really into punk rock, if I'm really honest. I like certain classic albums like the Sex Pistols. I like the Clash. I like the Jam, but they had their own flavour. The Jam, very special band to me. They were. They certainly weren't really punky. They kind of even the Police started off being a punk rock band because they had to jump in on whatever the genre was to be successful. You had to kind of declare you were that kind of music when actually you weren't. You had to kind of say you were, and you could clearly see the Police weren't really a punk rock band. As the Jam were,
yeah,
were like a mod band, with looking at the classics like the Who and the Kinks and all that. They weren't punk at all. But what punk did, it freed everything up again. It kind of shook the tree, and it gave young people a chance to a new creativity, which in a way was perhaps missing because you had to be really. When I grew up, you had to be good to play your instrument. You had to be really good at what you did, and I wanted to be
yeah,
like that. All these great fusion and interesting drummers. But when punk rock broke, you didn't really need to be that good. I don't mean that derogatively. Sometimes it's hard to play in that style because it has its own unique style. But the musicianship was a very different caliber. But having said that, they made some great music, some great songs and memorable songs, and they added to what we do now because it certainly added to my drumming. Because I back in the day had punk rock been there, I would never have been hitting my floor toms the way I do. When you played punk, you tended to thrash the drums a bit more for the energy level, and you didn't have a technique. It was all about the attitude and the power and the community that you had within the band. And when I got into Big Country, Stuart came out of a new wave band, the Skids. Really, they weren't really punk, but they have that association with that era.
yeah,
And
yeah,
when I was ending up playing drums for Stuart and Bruce and Tony, I thought, well, I'm going to bring that energy because the guitars had a lot of energy. So I tapped into that side of things. So the punk thing had an influence on me as well. Or even though I didn't like to think it had, it certainly did. And I think you can hear that in some of the early Big Country records where I'm thrashing the floor tom, doing that. I would never normally have played like that because the drummers that I used to listen to never did that. One thing I
yeah,
never did, and I still don't do, is I don't do that thing where lots of drummers do. I never do it. I don't know why. I never thrash the crash cymbal and let it swill all the way through a song. That shh, it doesn't do anything for me. I'd rather hit a China cymbal and it cuts out. And I never do the open hi-hat where the hi-hats are fizzing together. I always like
Yeah.
delicate. Like, I really like. I like the hi hat. To me, is that feel like the grace notes, the high dance, like Stuart Copeland. Like, it would be still fantastic, but the delicacy that he brings with the hi hat work. Steve Gadd was a great hi hat player, still is. Harvey Mason. I love Harvey Mason's drumming. Most people don't know who he is. His hi hat work was phenomenal. Lots of expression in the hi hats. So I was always careful to keep the hi hats prominent, but clean and tidy, including the ride cymbals, which is why I enjoy the China cymbal when drummers weren't really using China. The China cymbals back in the day, they were using them in prog rock. So I took it from that prog rock era and put it to mainstream rock, which really nobody was using. If you listen to things like on our early Big Country records, I was trying to get this China sound that was a really big China cymbal that nobody was making. I went through pasty cymbals. I didn't like the China cymbals they were making. I went through Zildjian. I didn't like what they were making. So I used to go down to this shop called Rayman Percussion in London. Because London was very accessible to me. And they had these genuine Chinese percussion instruments. And I had these beautiful Wuhan, I think they were called, China cymbals that I had to drill a hole in the middle because they were supposed to be held on with a big rope. And you hit them with a mallet, you know. But I put them on my drum kit in Big Country and made them into a cymbal. Now they're being made, actually. Zildjian now make them. They put, oh no, Zildjian do them, Wuhan do them. There's a company that actually make them, but I was doing it only recently. But 1980, begging the drum manufacturers, the cymbal manufacturers to make them, you know. But they make them. I go and source my own from a genuine China shop because I like the fact that they were very powerful, but they didn't ring on forever. They went, they shut down. Most of the China cymbals that the Zildjian and Paisley were making at the time were like gongs. You hit them and they would ring on forever.
Yeah.
And you know, I like to have the control. So if you listen to a track called Close Action with Big Country at the Crossing, there's a heavily use of my Rayman China cymbals that I used to go and handpick myself from this Chinese percussion shop. And the title track, The Crossing, has a big extended outro where I'm playing on the China, some cross rhythms, some polyrhythms. It's all on the China cymbal. I swap the rhythm around with the China accent. But it's with those particular China cymbals that I had to go and find myself in London. So that was when I needed to make a really big noise. It was that China cymbal that did it, and it was controllable. Unlike the cymbals that you often see when they hit them and they keep swilling them. I never went for that.
Wow. Well, you mentioned The Who. I've actually got a couple of questions about The Who. But first, I want to say that Roel Marasigan said, thanks for the mini drum clinic. That was actually really, really interesting. So he said, thank you for that. And also, you were talking about your style, but I've never seen you. You don't twirl, do you? You don't twirl your sticks. Your drumstick. Oh,
no, but hang on, let me do this. But I can.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, I can. But to be honest with you, I do admire the drummers that can, you know, they can put on a show like that. I mean, it makes me smile because, drummers that can do the trickery, if you like, you know, where they can do a beat and spin their stick, and I can do that. I can do that in the rehearsal. Yeah, you know, I do like that. I like the show thing, but for some reason, it's never been part of what I do. I could physically do it, but I never found the place or the reason to do it. You know, I think if I was probably in a metal band or some kind of other genre of music, as it being my band, I may have perhaps gone down that route a bit more and did more the showy thing. You know, which I love. You know, I admire it that they can still keep that going. It becomes a different kind of entertainment then, you know, when I see these drummers that can spin their sticks and do a solo, it's almost like they're in the circus because it's that kind of discipline you would need, you know? But it's great to watch and I do admire it and I think it's a fantastic skill. It's just something that's never really been on my radar for some reason. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've got these two.
Have you seen the wobbly stick? Where you
Yeah.
goes wobbly. See how wobbly is? Anyway.
Well, I've got this questioner from Bong Tan, who's in Manila. He said he wanted me to ask you about your experience working in Roger Daltrey's Under the Raging Moon. And he
Yeah.
also said, how does it feel working along some of the greatest drummers on earth? And I think he's talking about, like, I looked it up. He's talking about Cozy Powell, Carl Palmer, Stuart Copeland, and Martin Chambers, who all contributed in that sort of like album. So yeah. So what was the experience like? What was your experience like?
It's always a great experience to be on somebody's record, and having worked with Pete Townshend on his, I was able to get a call from Roger Daltrey basically, and it was his producer, Alan Shatlock, who's a really good friend of mine. We still communicate, and I stay with Alan. He lives in Nashville, and he's the principal of, as in professor for music technology and production at Belmont University in Nashville. And he's had some great hit records over here. He's a brilliant producer. So we were working with Big Country at Rack Studios in St. John's Wood in London. And I got a call to do this Roger Daltrey album. Alan had handpicked the band and he wanted me to play. I'd already met Roger several times through The Who, so he was happy for me to play. I'd worked with Pete Townshend and Simon. So it seemed like a good choice, I guess. And I went down to Rack Studios, the very same studio that The Crossing was recorded in. So when you hear The Crossing, most of that was recorded in Rack Studios. In the same drum room that Under a Raging Moon was recorded in, with the same drum kit on my head, on the same desk, with the same sound engineer that produced Big Country, but with a different producer. It wasn't Stephen Lee White, it was Alan Shatlock. And it was a great experience because once again, Alan allowed me to be me because he liked my playing and I had a reputation with Big Country now. And we knew we would get a fantastic drum sound in that room in Rack Studios. It's an old, I think it's Edwardian, the property. And it has high ceilings. And again, we had this big ambient drum sound. Again, not gated. It was used microphones recorded away from the drums close up. And those drum solos, I did a play out with Zach Starkey. I played on the whole album. And I'm very proud of my drum sound. It's one of my favourite drum sounds representing me, I may add. So if anyone wants to check that record out, I'm very proud of my drum sound. But it kind of says how I was of that era on my drums. But doing the solo was Alan's idea to have like a pulse, like Won't Get Fooled Again. Pete Townshend often used to use these little loops of, these passing tempos he would put into his music, which is very groundbreaking at the time. Nobody else has done that. And we were going to do a similar thing at the end as a tribute to Keith Moon. We would have and then 16 bars. Alan chose all these different drummers to play a 16-bar solo. Then we had bang into the next drummer. So the tempo was already strict. It had to be that tempo. You had to try and fit a solo in there. So yeah, to be amongst those great drummers, along with Stuart Copeland, etc., Roger Taylor. It was an honour to be involved in that record. My drum, I'm the last drum solo on that record, and I take the song back into the song. So yeah, it was a great honour to do, but we didn't do them together. Everyone did it in their own studio.
Oh right, yeah.
Piecemeal. It was all done. Stuart Copeland did it in his home studio. That Alan would go and visit him, record him, and then come back and then go to Roger Taylor's studio, record him. So as I was already at Rack Studios, mine was done in-house, if you like, because I was the drummer on that record. But it's a fabulous record. Roger sings incredibly well on that record. He's got incredible rock. And the songs are great. Brian Adams wrote a song on there, and there's some great songwriting on there. And Alan plays piano and guitar on that record as well. It's a brilliant, totally underrated, but it's a great drummers record. And if you're a drummer, if you want to hear I mean, if I'm able to say, a good rendition of a great drum sound that I'm very proud of. Under a Raging Moon by Roger Daltrey is a great record to reference me from.
So it wasn't like a drummer heaven, like all these drummers in one room and then playing all together. It wasn't like that.
No, I had a similar. I did a similar thing. I had a call from a good friend of mine. Sadly, God bless him, he passed away. Taylor Hawkins. He was a he was a good friend of mine and would travel to see me play over the years. He flew out to Ireland a couple of times to see me play when he was with Linus Morissette, and we spent some time in Manchester together. And he flew out to Colorado to see me play as well, twice. I think he did when we were out there about 8 years ago. And I got a call from him when I was coming back from a big country show. He called me and said, "Hey, Mark, it's Taylor here. What are you up to?" I said, "Well, it's a Sunday. I'm being driven home. We played last night in wherever it was, up north somewhere." He said, "That Roger Daltrey album you did, where you had those drummers doing drum, I've got my solo project, and I'd like to do the same thing. I like the concept. So can you talk me through how you did that?" So just like I was doing with you, how we did that using a sequence, and then having drummers. He said, "Let's do the same. I'm going to send you some tracks. Get my engineer send you some tracks today. Or can you put a drum solo down?" I said, "Well, I'm in a van. I'm going home." So I stopped off in Burnley, up north, or is it the Midlands? I don't know. And I couldn't get a studio. I was ringing around on my iPhone, going, and they're all closed. And I found a rehearsal room. So I still had my drums in the back. I was in my roadie's van, and we stopped off at this studio in Burnley somewhere. And then Taylor sent him the files to his laptop, and we tried to get as many microphones they weren't great mics, they were vocal mics really. And we mic'd the drum kit up. We did a very similar thing. The album was called the artist, he called it Birds of Satan. That was Taylor's solo record, Birds of Satan. He was singing on that as well. And it was called Be the Bird is the track. It is the track where all the drummers play at the end. And you'll hear a very similar thing to the Roger Daltrey album, where you hear a sequencer, bang, 16-bar drum solo, bang, another drummer. And I'm in one of those again. I was very honoured to be one of Taylor's choices on that. Dave Grohl's on there as well. So,
oh wow!
To have been on that, very honoured to have known Taylor, who was an incredible drummer himself, and an incredibly nice guy. He was a drummer's drummer, totally enthusiastic about, never stopped learning. You know, he was a great drummer himself, but he was always in contact with you, exchanging ideas, and always hungry for new things. Incredible guys. Such a tragedy and sad loss that he's no longer with us. So,
I know, it's really sad that. But anyways, I've got another song like The Who. This one is actually just a message. It's from Elliot Wheeler. He said that he loved your work on Pete Townshend's White City album. Yeah. He said that's great drums. And he also said that Clem Burke played on that album as well. Is that?
I think he played on. I do believe he played on an album called. I may have been there. I do apologise. I'm not great remembering what tracks are all. I've done so many records. I get lines get blurred. I thought he played on an album called Empty Glass, where I played on a track called A Little Is Enough. That was Pete Townshend's first album. I played all Pete Townshend's records, but we had different drummers sometimes depending on who Pete wanted to use on particular songs. And as the years progressed, I was playing entirely on Pete's records because I was often doing drum duties with Simon Phillips. So on White City, I thought half the songs were me, half the songs were Simon, I thought, on that record. But I may be wrong. But again, it was great to be in association with Simon Phillips, who's also an incredible drummer, and I love his drumming. He plays some great drums. Some people get confused as to who played what on those records because we had a similar approach in the same studio with a similar sized drum kit. So recently there was a track called Stop Hurting People that Todd Zuckerman had done a little podcast on, done a drummer spotlight on me, which I was very honoured to be. And he talked about that record, and some of the comments were, I thought it was Simon Phillips. but it actually was me on that particular
It
track.
was you, yeah, yeah.
They,
Right?
you know, unless you read the credits, sometimes it's hard to tell if you're not a drummer.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I would like to ask you is again, this is so like very popular for the Filipino new wavers, so like my age and stuff. Because
Yeah.
you recently also collaborated with Peter Coyle, and you did well. Peter Coyle of the Lotus Eaters. I mean, the Lotus Eaters are massive in the Philippines, and you did this project called ESP and an album called 22 Layers of Sunshine. So,
Yeah.
can you just tell us more about like working with Peter Coyle and
Well,
like
yeah.
what was it?
Tw- I did 2 albums with ESP. One was without Peter Coyle, and we had a singer called John Beagley on vocals. That was the first one, and I also sing lead vocals on 2 songs on that record myself. So the vocal duties on that record was John Bigley on most of the songs, but on 2 of those songs, um, it was me singing lead vocals, which most people haven't heard. So I'm very proud of that. It was a project that I got together with a guy called Tony Lowe, a guitarist that had been working with Simon Townsend for many years. He was also a producer. He produced one song with the um, Pet Shop Boys, yeah. And he's a great producer. He's a fabulous musician, very nice guy, and he's incredibly musical. And he never really done these solo projects, and he wanted me to be involved in this solo project called ESP. The first album, what's the first album? Trying to think of the first album. I should know.
So, it's
Invisible
20.
Din.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go. Invisible Din was the first record. It's called Lowe and Brzezicki ESP. And I sing lead vocals on 2 songs along with John Beagley. And then when it came for the second album, the album you just said, which I also play on, that's when we used who we talked about. Remind me.
Yeah. What Peter Coyle? And this is like a pro.
Lotus Eaters. I met at one of these 80s. We do these gigs where these retro gigs where people dress up in the 80s clothing in these big shows in the UK. And I met up with him, and we said we should work together somewhere and somehow. And for some reason, I recommended him to because we didn't have a vocalist for the next album. Although I sang 2 vocals on the first album,
Yeah.
I introduced Tony to Peter Coyle, and it was fantastic. He's got a beautiful voice, and he did the whole record singing, and I was being the drummer. I do like singing just for another form of expression because I do a lot of backing vocals, but I very rarely sing lead vocals. But I enjoy being the drummer in the band. So Peter Coyle was fantastic. It's a really great record, if you like, and it's kind of scratching my prog rock itch that I was always enjoying back in the 70s. I was able to do that, kind of like Phil Collins did. I kind of saw that as my own personal brand. It's not being in Big Country, him not being in Genesis, and in our downtime we do a different project. So that was kind of my solo project with Tony.
Yeah,
And Peter.
I was gonna say because I found out that originally Peter Coyle, before he actually became sort of like the Lotus Eaters and into new wave and stuff, that he was really into prog rock at the time. So this album is, like it's a prog rock album, I believe.
Yeah, it's one of those guilty pleasures. I think, when prog rock became unfashionable to say, oh my God, prog rock, dinosaur music, all these horrible things said about it. Music wouldn't be what it is without it. And it's musicians' music to a degree, because it's interesting musically for a musician. It stretches you. Sorry, I forgot the question.
Oh no, because I was all like saying that this is sort of like very different from what Peter Coyle's The Lotus Eaters was like.
Wanted to admit that they like prog rock because it was unfashionable to do so, And music is music. It's like anything. It's all part of the big orchestra. It can be a big landscape of instruments. It can be a complete spectrum of music from this side to that side. I like it all. I'm not biased to anything. I embrace it all. It's all part of the orchestra. It doesn't matter if it's woodwind or brass or drums. I like it all, and everything has a value, and it has a place where it has a value today.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and also because I know that we've been sort of like going on a long time now, but I wanted to ask you about the things that I found out because you also drummed for like Fish, Rick Astley, Procol Harum, and Tiffany. I mean, this is an interesting bit because I saw Tiffany in 2018, and what I did is sort of like looked at all the videos that I took of Tiffany in 2018 when I saw her in Preston, just making sure or checking whether it was you who played the drums, but it wasn't. So when did you play drums for Tiffany?
Oh gosh, must have been about yeah, I Mark Alberici, who's was producing that record. I was in a band called the Crazy World. I was in the band for a few years. We did an album called The Vampire Suite with the Crazy World of Arthur Brown, and he had a huge hit with Fire in the 1960s.
Yeah,
In fact,
yeah,
yeah, and that track Fire, most people don't know it was Carl Palmer used to be the drummer in that band from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and
yeah,
he played on Fire. So I ended up working with the Crazy World of Arthur Brown in the 1990s. And Mark Alberici, who was a local friend, I was in a band with him as well. I was in many bands. He was the guitarist, and he moved to America and was producing Tiffany. And when he came over here to record at Rockville Studios, which is a famous studio where we played there with Big Country, one of our albums was recorded there. I think Those Places Like Home, Wind a Long Face was recorded there, one of those. We in fact, Bohemian Rhapsody was recorded in the same studio as Tiffany's record and Big Country's record as well. So we went down to Rockville Studio, I recorded that. I did because Mark wanted me to be on one song for many reasons. So I ended up meeting Tiffany, and I met up with her as well in America as well, because I go up there often as well. So they've become great friends of mine. Different kind of music. And it's great music. So, and she's got a fabulous voice. You know, people remember for her. With Big Country, you remember for your biggest hit and your one-off thing. But she's actually incredible. She's really great at singing, and she's got great vocal. She's a really lovely person.
yeah.
And you know, it's music. Music's great. Her music's great.
Yeah, I'm actually going to see her in Manchester soon, so I'm really looking forward. But you're not going to be playing. You're not going to be part of her band. No.
I mean, most of the time, I do session work when I can. I'm off to America on Tuesday to do some records out in Nashville. But most of the time, I'm able to do the recording, but not much of the live work. You know, I did more so in the 90s because Big Country broke up at some point. Although it was never reported that Big Country broke up, it was sort of portrayed that I left the band. It wasn't.
Oh,
The band broke up, and I went on to do what I was getting calls to do. I did a tour with Tears for Fears, Sowing the Seeds of Love tour. I did a little spell with Sting on the Soul Cages tour. I did some TV with him on BBC. And I was doing an album and a tour with Fish. So I was able to do more touring when Big Country had stopped for a few years. So I was on tour with. I did 2 albums with Fish. One was Wilderness of Mirrors. I did that tour and the album, and the other was Field of Crows. I didn't tour with him on that. I was also doing a lot of stuff with Midge from Ultravox, because I was in Ultravox for a whole year when Warren Khan was no longer in the band. Midge asked me to join Ultravox as well as being Big Country.
Yeah.
So we did U-Vox down in Germany. Yeah, with Colin. What's his name? Connie Plank was the producer who produced Kraftwerk. Amazing guy. He never recorded a drum kit. I was his first drummer that, you know, with all those amazing synth bands that he was a pioneer of recording. Kraftwerk. And with Ultravox. He never recorded a real drum kit in his studio. So I took this ginormous drum kit down to Neunkirchen in Germany. To record this Ultravox album with Ultravox, which again I'm very proud of. With that particular producer, again no longer with us, but a legendary producer. I'm very honoured to have worked with Connie. So I did quite a with Midge as on his solo project. I did a few albums. I did Answers to Nothing, The Gift, and Pure. I did those records with Midge. Lovely guy to work with. Very interesting rhythmically to work with as well, because he likes to kind of push you with some programming things. You know, he doesn't just give you a click track when you play your drums. He'll give you little teaser things to, like, it's only just being like do do do. You'll have do 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 do. You play along to that. He'll give you these little rhythms that he's got samples. It makes you think of the drums in a different way. And we had my brother on bass on some of those songs. My brother Steve still plays bass, although talking early when he was in the garage opposite playing bass. He ended up playing on Fidget's record with me and touring with me, and Nick Kershaw. We did a Radio Musicalia album together with my brother Steve. We also used Mark King on Midge's record as well, which he's a phenomenal bass player, as most people know. So it was a joy to work with.
Yeah.
I've worked with some great bass players, including Bruce Foxton. Yeah.
Roel Marazigan said that amazing collaborations. Do you have a favorite? And do you have a wish list of artists you want to work with?
Oh gosh.
First, do you have a favorite of all the amazing collaborations that you've done?
I think they come and go. You know, I revisit them. I mean, my all-time favorite thing from a personal thing was the fact that I ended up working with Phil Collins live on those many Princess Trust concerts where we had, you know, it's still incredible when I look back. We had Elton John on piano, George Harrison on guitar, Mark King on bass, Brian May on second guitar, Ryan Adams coming out and doing a song, and you know, it just went on and on. So they were a joy to do, and obviously it was for a good cause for the Princess Trust. But to be Phil Collins was absolutely incredible experience for me. He still gave me goosebumps hearing him play live. You know, even if he was doing a simple rhythm, well, he didn't play simple, he played incredible stuff. But just the way he played, his action and his drum sound, being 2 feet away from me, and we were playing together, because him being a left-handed drummer meant that, and I'm being a right-handed drummer, we set our drum kits side to side, and so our hi-hats were very close to each other because he was left-handed. And there was one discussion that we had that we were possibly going to set the drums so close together that we would share the hi-hat, so that one drum joined the other drum kit via the hi-hat in the middle. And then we had a discussion, well, who would operate the foot pedal, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So in the end, drum risers with a little gap in the middle. We even talked about playing opposite each other, where we would share the tom-toms and sit opposite side on, so the two drummers are looking at each other, sharing the bass drum on each side of the bass drum. You know?
Oh.
Probably was too complicated to work out, but we would have to have the tom-toms flat as well. You know, they couldn't be angled. So we ended up just playing together. So that's one of my most personal
favorite. Yeah,
and we ended up at the Nelson Mandela show at the original Wembley Stadium as well, and all these artists were coming on, which was incredible. But the crazy thing about it was, most of the artists that come on and play, I'd already worked with them. So, like, if Tears for Fears had come on, I'd already worked with them. Fish would come on, and John Oma Trading would come on, I'd worked with her as well. So, you know, I was in company, and I had a bit of familiarity there to make me feel more comfortable. So, yeah. What else? I mean, Midge's collaboration was very special. It's always great working with Midge. My Cult collaboration as well, you know, depends where I go. You know, people don't know who certain people are. But the Cult, particularly in America, I get a lot of lovely comments about my playing on the Love album, which I'm very proud of. So my association with the Cult is very special as well. As well as, obviously, big country, but we're not really talking about collaborations.
So,
Pete
do you have a wish list of artists you want to work with?
How special Pete Townshend is as well to work with him.
Oh yeah.
You know, I'm very blessed, and I don't take it for granted. I'm very blessed that I get calls for these things, for these records. And as I said to you earlier, I still find it an incredible thing that somebody who writes songs, whoever they are, it's such a personal thing, songwriting, ask somebody to come in and make a noise over it, because that's what I'm doing. It's a big honour to play on these records and to be with these people. Pete Townshend was a very interesting guy to play with as well. He really challenged me in a good way with coming out with allowing creative ideas. A lot of his songs were fantastic to drum to. They would allow some great drumming to happen naturally. I think Simon Phillips said, because he worked on some of those records as well, that the songs played themselves. And I tended to agree with that comment. That when I worked with Pete, a lot of the rhythm that you hear as a drummer, that when you want to come up with ideas, the rhythm's are already there. If you've only got to listen, you've got to start listening to the lyrics. You've got to start listening. I often do a drum fill, and I haven't heard the lyrics. And to my surprise, my drum fill fits exactly on the lyric, because lyrics are rhythms, and it could be the other way around. I think, well, how am I going to approach this song? So I listen to the lyrics and listen to the phrasing, and I get a lot of the music and the drumming performance from the vocals. I get it from the rhythm guitar. I get it from the way, like Pete Townshend would play his guitar and sing. I would take the rhythm from that, because that's what you're accompanying, and that's what you're playing to. You're listening to the piece. You're not just playing something where you're not giving the song respect. So a lot of those rhythms are already there, and it's picking them out rhythmically. That's already been suggested by all those things. So yeah, Pete Townshend, we did an album called Psychoderelict, and that was an interesting record by the fact he was very experimental on that record. He was using a lot of sequences from Barbara O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again, and all those tracks that had this pulse. And he would basically ask me to make certain sections up, and he was conducting me from this big screen he put in front, like I'm looking at you. He would be conducting me how to play in front of the drums. And there was one track that he said to me, Mark, on this particular song, I want you not to stop drumming. I only stop drumming when I tell you to stop. I said, well, how do you mean? He said exactly what I said. You've got to keep drumming, but do not stop drumming until I tell you. So here we go. And he sent me the track. I never heard it. But I came up with some parts instantly. He wanted me to be that fresh. He didn't want me to write it out. He wanted to unfold naturally. He wanted me to react to his reactions and to react to his music. And whilst I was playing the song, Pete Townshend came out from the room into the studio, kind of whispering, saying, keep playing. And as I was drumming, he started to take my drums away slowly. He took my cymbals away, so I had no more cymbals to play. Then he took my floor tom away. He told me to keep playing, keep playing. Then he took my bass drum, started to move my bass drum away. So I had to kind of move my leg to keep playing it till I couldn't play it anymore. So basically, he was taking my drums away to see how I interpret the drumming whilst I had less to play with. And we recorded on one of the tracks like that. Very, very, very different. But it came out fantastic.
It's amazing.
I've never had that experience before, but it was a wonderful experience. Great fun as well. And I had no drums left to hit. I had no drums left at all.
So what was left? Just the sticks, and they were going like this.
Well, I didn't make noise on the sticks, so I thought that wasn't part of my idea to play. My tools and my trade were no longer there, so I stopped. And
oh my god! Yeah, that was amazing. But
there's very cleverly constructed songs, and we work in a different way. But just to give you a little bit of flavour of the genius of Pete and the way he constructs songs and likes spontaneity to happen. That was certainly a way of getting the spontaneity out of me, and I cherish those moments.
Yeah. Well, now that we've got going back to Big Country, because you're playing again, you're together again with a different lineup now. It was like a 5-piece band. So we've got you and Bruce Watson and his son Jamie, and then Simon. Is it Simon Huff or Simon Who?
Simon Huff.
Yeah.
Gil Allen is the bassist, the new bassist.
Yeah. So, what's it? How does it feel, and what's it like now having this new sort of like lineup? And
Well, I think once you, it's a tricky thing to say because music evolves anyway. You know, if we had exactly the same lineup, we would sound different now than we did when we started in 1981 because your musicality grows, it changes, it progresses. Stuart's voice slightly changed, over the years. You know, people say it got more Americanized. I didn't notice it because I was with him all the time. But you evolve as a band. Directions move slightly. So in a way, it's the same but different because, um, obviously, it can never be the same without Stuart. And we respect that. So
yeah,
we are creating making the sound as near as we can. Now we've had different bass player changes. Tony retired years ago and wanted to be a teacher and kind of step out of music. He wants to get back into it also now. And I did play on his last solo record, which was great to be with Tony again because we have such a history together. And he's a wicked bass player. But
yeah,
how is it? It's the same but different. I think Bruce Watson summed it up. I mean, Simon Hoff does a fantastic job of singing big country songs because nobody can try and be like Stuart Adamson. You don't want a total look-alike, a total sound-alike because it was not going to go down well. And so Simon's his own man, but he does have a similar timbre to Stuart Adamson in a certain range. And he's a proper vocalist. He can belt it out in full voice. And he does the songs proud. You know, he does a great job, as does what Gil Allen does on bass. He's got great way. He's a professional bass player. You know, he was in the Army show. He plays with the Skids now. He's a great bass player. Jamie
yeah,
does a great job keeping the twin guitars alive because we had Stuart and Bruce doing the twin guitars. And Jamie has grown up seeing the band from the year dot and being under his father's guidance. He plays guitar great to represent the twin guitars in Big Country. So, you know, if you close your eyes, it's the nearest you're going to get to Big Country. Now, I remember Bruce Watson made me laugh. He said to the audience once, you know, that we had Mike Peters come and sing for us, who did a fantastic job, and he brought a lot of the Mike Peters style to the band. You know, because he's his own man, he had his own thing, and he ultimately had to go back to being the Alarm with Mike Peters,
yeah,
which
long,
we respect. Yeah, lovely, lovely guy. We love him dearly. And we're grateful for how he steered Big Country during that time for the Journey album.
yeah,
But as Bruce said, and it's only when I thought about it, it's actually true. You know, whoever sings for Big Country is the new Doctor Who. You know, they change Who all the time, but it's the same program. It doesn't matter who it is. You know, they're the next time traveller and they're the next character that you get involved in. So, in a way, Simon Hoff is the new Doctor Who. It will never be Stuart Adamson.
yeah,
And talking about that, you know, one thing that always saddens me a little bit is the fact that when you have bands where all the musicians are still alive, it's a very rare thing. You know, we lost Stuart and we all miss him terribly. But, you know, you've got a choice of either stopping his legacy and his music being heard, and his own music as well, we co-wrote songs, or putting it to bed. And it's pointless putting it to bed when the new music is so great. And it also keeps his legacy alive. Now, we can't go and get Stuart back, but there are other bands that have the singer still alive. And it always saddens me when there's been like a breakup in the band, like they won't talk to each other, and they have a new singer because they won't work with him anymore, you know. And it's always sad for that because those voices are very special to those bands, like Tony Hadley is to Spandau Ballet, like Fish was
yeah,
to Marillion. Not to say that they can't move on because they've moved on fantastically. The
yeah,
Stragglers, all these people have got different singers. I mean, our situation was very similar to Queen. Not the same level, I might add, because they had global stardom and fame on a global level. But nevertheless, they don't have the original bass player, and they don't have the original singer who passed.
yeah,
They have the
yeah,
original guitar, original drummer, the same as Big Country. But the show goes on, and they do fantastic shows together. I worked with both Brian May and Roger Taylor when we had the singer from Keane singing.
Tom Chaplin,
Yeah,
Tom Chaplin. Okay,
you know, we
yeah,
did
yeah,
he was incredible. Tom was singing with Queen, and I was blessed to be able to play the drums on that as well, along with Roger. So, you know, the music lives on, and people get to see the nearest they're ever going to get to see it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it keeps the legacy alive, and it keeps the spirit of the person who's passed alive as well. And it also salutes his great songwriting and lyrics. So,
Yeah.
and
Well,
people, you know, in a strange way, people forget as well. You know, I've often done things where there's no longer the original drummer, like with the Colts. I was in Procol Harum after B.J. Wilson passed. You know, when Gary Brooker called me to. Robin Trowell was the guitarist. Dave Bond was the bassist from Eric Clapton's band, and I was the drummer. Matthew Fisher, the original organist of Procol Harum. We did an album called The Prodigal Stranger, and The Wells on Fire, and much touring we did with that band. But, you know, you can change certain things, but when you have the original vocalist, it kind of it makes it special when they're still alive. And it's
yeah.
always when the vocalist is still alive, but there's been a fallout with each other, and they get different vocalists in. It's a different thing. It's not the same for us. You know, we've had to survive, keep it going, as what Queen have done. It's a different story when you're a lead singer. So yeah, we're keeping it alive.
As fans, we are actually very grateful that you're still doing it, because like me personally, I never had a chance to see Big Country when, you know, like in the 80s. So seeing you so like live now, for me, it's just, I'm just really grateful, because hearing all these songs played live for me is just amazing. It's just really, really good. So thank you for doing it still. Yeah.
From a point of view, we enjoy songs. They've been our lifetime's work, you know, and it's great to be able to new generation to hear those songs. You know, people. Well, some people don't, you know, have never seen it with Stuart, and even on some of these new about, you know, some people forget who the original people were when they're so young. They don't know any difference. They only know what they hear. But Stuart's legacy will always be there within Big Country and the Skids.
Yeah, well, speaking of, you mentioned Mike Peters. I just want to say, get well soon, Mike Peters, because he's a bit poorly. You know, he's really poorly at the moment. So I just want to say, you know, get well soon, and hopefully we'll see him again live.
Yeah, I know he's well. I mean, it's nothing we can't say because it's from public. He's got pneumonia, and he has a compromised immune system, which he's been very public about. And so we do send our best wishes to him, and for a speedy recovery, and lots of love as well.
Yeah. Well, I'd say thank you so much. We've learned so much from you. But is there any other sort, like anything else you want to say to our friends?
Sorry, I'm just asking. Yeah, I would like to just say that I've done a great record with both Bruce Foxton and Russell Hastings, which is coming out soon. They go out from the Jam, and I've been very blessed that I had a few years working with them, and they've always had me on their solo record. And they've got a new record coming out, not titled yet as far as I know, but I've just heard the tracks that I've done. And it's a fabulous record with both Bruce Foxton and Russell Hastings. Fabulous songwriting. But I've also done a record with a guy called J.J. Gilmore, who was in a band called The Silencers. It's another Scottish band. He's a fabulous vocalist. He was in a band with me, with Bruce Watson from Big Country, and Bruce Foxton from the Jam, myself, and Josh Phillips. We were who was a keyboard player with the band. We were a band called the Casbah Club. Those who know Big Country's history. And J.J. Gilmore has a new record out. This is the record, which I play drums on. I do backing vocals as well. It's a fabulous record. Wow. There's no title on the front, which is unusual, but that's the name of the record. It's called This Time. Yeah, it's a fabulous song.
I remember The Silencers.
Well, JJ's voice is very beautiful. They're fabulous crafted songs. There's a line up here. I get creditors of drums and backing vocals again.
Brilliant.
We've done a showcase in Glasgow last week, or just over a week ago, and we've got another. We're doing a festival in Glasgow where I'll be playing with JJ with this band in a month or so. But the record is fantastic, and there's some great playing on this record. Great songwriting and great
Oh
vocal.
wow. We'll
Yeah, so
definitely check that. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely check that out.
yeah.
And oh, there's another Rob Jones, drummer of the High Five from Liverpool. He said afternoon. So hello, Rob. Thank you for joining us as well. So
Right, well,
yeah. So we've
what was
already.
can I just say
Pardon?
one thing? I want to say
Yeah.
one thing. There's some interesting things coming out from me regarding my move to Natal drums. I moved to Natal drums. I'm in good company with the same guys that signed me up to Pearl many years ago. I have some interesting things coming out with my name associated with it, some new ideas and new products coming out. So watch this space with Natal.
Oh well, dude, it's funny that you mentioned it because I remember there was one time I mentioned that and I said it the wrong way. I said it was natal. And it was
Natal, yeah.
like, yeah.
I would say Natal, and he said to me, Mark, it's Natal. So I was saying, yeah. But they've been around. Most people didn't know, but oh gosh, I always go blank when I'm being interviewed. Jim Marshall is part of the Marshall Company, and so I found out that Jim Marshall was a drummer. Most people think he was just a guitarist, but he was always a drummer, and his dream was to have a drum manufacturing company and to produce drums. And shortly before he died, he achieved that dream with the Natal drums. He used to make congas and a few percussion instruments that John Bonham used to use in Led Zeppelin. But the Natal drums are fantastic, and I'll be having some certain signature things coming out, snare drums and kits and stuff, and certain
Yeah,
designs
yeah.
of my own. So yeah, it's going to be a good thing to as a drummer to look out for.
Oh, it's brilliant. And we know that you love Phil Collins, so he's I won't ask you about the drumming heroes now, but can I just ask you if you have any advice to all the drummers out there or aspiring drummers out there?
Yeah, don't give up because it's easy to be, you know, life throws things at you to stop you doing things. I mean, I had to dedicate myself full time to do it, and I think I'm not great with the internet. I'm not great with the IT stuff. My wife kindly does all that for me, which is fantastic at that stuff. So it's a different era for me now. I mean, there was recording studios everywhere. People do things at home. I don't have a home studio. I still go into studios. But I think the only advice I give young drummers is to listen to a wide range of music, and don't be too tied into having to play a certain way. If you find
Yeah,
something you're onto a good thing with, then go with it. But for learning, learn from all the things that's unpopular. Popular was there once before. You know, be inventive. Don't be scared to be yourself. It's always nice to have a hero and emulate them and sound like those. But it's always good to have your own signature, your own sound, and your own style, which is what I always wanted. And all my heroes had that. You can always tell on record it was Phil Collins. You can always tell it was Steve Gadd. You can always tell it was Billy Cobham. You can always tell it was John Bonham. They had their own signature sound, and I hopefully have that with myself. Uh, but in order to do that, you have to allow yourself to be yourself and then explore. But in order to do that, you must listen to a big variety of music so that you can play. If you're given the opportunity to progress as a professional musician, you won't go, oh, I can't play that music. Oh, I don't understand it. You learn it all and be good at it all because it makes you a great drummer. You know, learn how Phil plays in his solo project. It's different to how he plays in Brand X. I've played some of those songs that Phil plays in his solo project live, you know. And the drumming's incredible. It's brilliant drumming, you know. Don't ever write things off because it's no longer popular. You know, dig deep and find these things, regardless if it's hip or not, because they all have a value at the time that they were made, and they have a value as to why we play the way we do now.
yeah,
But it's very easy to get put off, and you know, life gets in the way, and you end up having to get a job and doing this, and that's also good. You know, you got to get on with your life. And if you can make it a hobby, if you can make it something you do as a hobby, that's even good as well. But to be a professional drummer, you have to be dedicated, and you have to take the punches. You have to be able to, you know, work hard, uh, network with as many people as possible. I still do that. I play when somebody rings me up. I go do a gig. I don't go, no, I'm going to rest on my laurels. Oh, I did this. I'm going to do that. No, I'm hungry as I was when I started. It's good. It's good to keep that attitude that you can play heavy metal on one side, and then someone wants to do a jazz gig in a pub, in a bar, a week later. You should be able to say yes to both of those gigs, because you never know where you may lead meeting these people. Because that's how I met people, just by playing with as many people as I could and listening to as much variety of music as I could. And you end up style anyway. So, and to me, it doesn't matter what band you end up in. If it becomes a career, if you can bring something to the table, then you can make it your own. You can. Oh, I don't want to be involved in that band. Well, why not? You can maybe you can make that rock band feel a bit more jazzy by your playing. Maybe you can make that jazz band feel more rocky in your playing. You bring your flavour to the table. I mean, it's difficult out there now because they don't have the infrastructure that was around with record deals and all those things when I was growing up. There was more things on offer, and it's got harder and harder. There's more people all trying to do the same thing. So you've got to stand out, and to stand out, you've got to be good, and you've got to bring your own style as well. So just get out there and meet people and enjoy it on whatever level it brings you. And if it doesn't bring you a career, enjoy it by meeting people that have a similar taste in music and play with them at a weekend. It's not a must do or no do. Music should be enjoyable, whether it's a hobby or your career. And I love it like the day I started. That's why I still love doing it.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. You're so amazing. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Big Country again, or
Seeing you there again with us, so come and see us again.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I mean, like Mark Brzezicki. Oh my God. I still can't believe you actually said yes to Ask the Drummer.
I'm only a drummer. And one thing I would say is that the reason I play the drums, I should have said this from the start, is because I wanted to play music. I didn't want to be a drummer that played drum solos, as in, that's all I do. It's all about being a good song drummer and being interesting is what I wanted to do. I wanted to bring the songs alive, but it's all about the song. So, why do I play the drums? To accompany music. That's the starting point of me being a drummer. I accompany music. That's it. That's why I do it. And I love music. And to be involved in music by hitting things is pretty damn good.
Yes, that's true. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of the weekend. And I really hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that it was sort of gone on for a bit longer than an hour. I did say only for an hour, but a bit longer than an hour.
Go on for another hour,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right. So, bye. Yeah. See you. Yeah. See you soon. Yeah. Bye. Bye. Oh my God, thank you so much for joining us live. And oh my God, it's so amazing, and all those wonderful stories. I mean, it's the first time that we've actually done Ask the Drummer. It's very technical because for most of you who've seen me do Ask the Drummer, I only ask non-technical things, but he's just so incredible. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot, and I hope you all learned a lot from him as well. Like what Roel Marasegan said from Detroit, thanks for the mini drum clinic. So yeah, thank you so much, Mark Brzezicki of Big Country. That was absolutely amazing. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Please do keep an eye out for next week's guest announcement post. We're going to have another amazing drummer for next week. And like I always say, love music, love life. And we've seen Mark Brzezicki. He's so awesome. So love, love, love drummers. And I'll see you all next week. Bye. Bye.